and welcome back to the third module of our journey in the advanced strategic management. Now, in the first two modules, we have understood the basic aspects of corporate management. We have understood the different sort of strategies that these organizations need to adopt in due course of time, such as in their life cycle itself, to survive and to compete with the rest of the world. Right? In module 2, we have understood the basic aspect, the strategies that the organizations need to adopt, like the growth strategies of the organizations, the integration strategies, maybe the vertical integration, horizontal integration, the expansion strategies of the organization, the various different aspects of these strategies such as mergers, acquisitions. We have talked of all of those things in module 2. And we are here to continue our journey further in the course of advanced strategic management. And in this module, module 3, we will witness how these organizations makes their journey from the domestic territory to the international boundaries. So the entire module 3 is based on the concept of internationalization of the organizations, which deals with different aspects of the organization's journey from domestic level of their practices to the international level. Right? So let us start without wasting our time. Let us start our journey. But whenever we are talking of this internationalization process itself, most of the time we are coming out with the concept of globalization, and we do say that this globalization is doing everything in a similar way everywhere across the organizations. But actually, this is a myth. The process of or the journey of an organization from domestic level to the global level, the journey of the organization from a domestic organization to define itself as a global organization passes through many such phases. It is not confined to fewer aspect, but we need to take a larger scope of the applications on the organizations. Two major factors that we need to take into consideration. As I said, that globalization is not doing same thing everywhere in a similar way. No, there are many such things which may act as a barrier in the organization, such as the organization's political scenario, its economic scenario, the environmental factors, maybe the cultural factors, the legal system, the rules, regulations that guides the organization's course of action in that particular country itself. So all of these things do differ. So what we need to understand is that we have to consider two different major aspects. First, we would like to develop our efficiency as a global organization, but at the same time, we cannot ignore the local culture of the country itself. So some terminologies that we need to be aware of, right? Now, we come across with, in the entire process of globalization or internationalization, we come across with three such important terms. One is called as the home country or the parent country. The origin place of the organization, origin country of the organization is called as the home country or the parent country. Beyond that, wherever the organization would like to start its operations, that particular country is called as host country. And whenever we do talk of the relationship that exists there between the home country and the host country, and we go beyond that relationship, we refer to any other country that is called as a third country. So it's not about replicating the business whenever you are moving from domestic territory to the international borders. Right? It's not about replicating the business practices of the domestic organization to the international level, because the scenario would be something else. So how do you start your business in the international level, right? Beyond the domestic territory? That depends on the factors which we are going to elaborate on. But before that, we need to understand what are the basic reasons for which organizations do think of going for internationalization process. The first reason is that we're talking of the diversity. Diversity, in a sense, like we have understood earlier also, there are vertical integrations, horizontal integrations, right? But diversity can be like either coming out with a new set product line or service line in the same industry, or it may also lead to diversifying our business where we don't have skills and expertise. So to a completely new industry where we need to operate with a completely new set of rules, regulations, everything. Right? So whenever the organizations do go for an expansion, maybe we're thinking of the reasons of expansion, like when there is stagnancy in the domestic market or in the home market itself. So organizations do need to go for expansion of their business in international territories. That's the case. Like beyond that, the normal reason of the organization to expand beyond the territories will also lead the organizations to penetrate into international markets. We are thinking of the different ways by which organizations do actualize these things is mergers and acquisitions, buybacks, takeovers, many such different strategies that we have already covered in our previous sessions. Right? So the organizations now do have certain options with them. After having a successful business scenario in the domestic level itself, organizations now can think of entering into the international markets through partnering with some other organizations, venturing into with some other projects, right? So this mode of partnership is one, or else we are thinking of these organizations can also venture into these projects like internationalization processes by themselves. But what sort of strategies that these organizations will take, that depends on the factors. We'll discuss that. Beyond that, whenever there is a profit aspect of the organizations, we have discussed it earlier, like nowadays organizations do pass through a stiff competition. So they do have a choice, either to compete, win over the competition, or they should perish from the market. And if they would like to compete with the other organizations, then price is a factor that they need to take into consideration. So organizations do come out with a thrust of cutting down their cost of production. Right? But we cannot compromise with the resources. So only one way by which we can lower the cost of production is when we go for higher volume of production. So more and more the production will be, lower will be the cost of the production. Right? So that is why, like, considering the consumption of their products and services in the domestic level, when they go for an expansion and there is a demand of the product and service at the international level itself. So that makes the organizations to go for a high volume of production. So that gives them the economies of scale itself. So larger volume, lower cost of production. Everything, like you are going for shipments, transportations, you can negotiate with them. Cost will be reduced whenever you are going for mass export of your products. Right? You're dealing with financial institutions which do provide the investments So there also you can have lower rate of interest itself whenever you are going for mass, loan kind of thing, investment kind of thing itself. So on a long run, organizations to earn their profitable reason, they should go for large volume of production itself. Sometimes also it is observed that to promote the economic activities, the government of certain countries invite investments in that particular country, right? And the government provides many such different sort of subsidies, incentives for the kind of production process that we're starting up in a new place itself. So all it depends on the kind of policy that the host country government does have. How do they promote the industrial revolution in that country itself? That growth objective is common for each and every organization as they move from the domestic level to the international level itself. And as I said, they can go through this joint ventures, partnering with the other organizations. And these joint ventures can happen in many different ways, what we have already discussed, right? So either you share your resources with a mutual way, right? Like sharing a technology, and the other aspect, like other partner can share the market expertise, market niche. Right? So somehow rather, whenever we cannot do it alone in our own way, we need to be dependent on others. Right? So the present day demands that we need to have a collaborative approach, and that collaboration is what that makes the organizations to achieve their part of accomplishments, whatever we will talk of. Right? So whenever we go to this, these are the major reasons of internationalization. But whenever we go for this internationalization process itself, we need to understand one thing, that all of a sudden these organizations, they cannot go for being a global organization, as I say, from their domestic level of operations. Right? So any such organization passes through different phases of the internationalization process. Broadly, all of those phases of internationalization process can be summarized in these 5 steps itself. Now, the first step of this internationalization process is to enhance this domestic operations. As I say, you need to understand over here, we are referring to 3 such different aspects: parent country, home country, domestic country. This is the country where the organization originates. Host country is the country where the organization would like to establish its business, right? And third country is beyond the relationship between this parent country and the host country. If we refer to any other country, that is called as a third country. Okay. Now, what it happens? Now, in the first phase of internationalization, actually, the organizations focus more at the domestic level only. So the thrust is given at the domestic operations. Organizations would like to enhance their skill, expertise in carrying out the business at the domestic level. Then they can think of expansion. But unless and until they are successful at the domestic level, it is very difficult for the organizations to survive. Right? At times also, this phase, domestic level of operation, to say no. At this particular phase, when organizations, if at all, passes through the phase of stagnancy, then they do search for an expansion option, but again, in a new market niche, in the same domestic level. So organizations would like to create their expertise in their operations, their parts in the domestic language. Here I'd like to refer one thing, that whenever these organizations in their path of journey from being from domestic to the international level itself, we refer the approach of the organization, which is classified into four categories. Commonly it is called as the EPRG model: ethnocentric, polycentric, regiocentric, and geocentric approach. Now, in the ethnocentric approach, organizations are confining themselves to their parent country itself. They do have an assumption that whatever they are doing, that is best. Right? So they rely on their own expertise, they rely on their own skill potentials, they rely on their own resources, right? May it be financial, market, or technological, or human resources, whatever the resources we talk of. But the ethnocentric approach says that you should depend on your own resources, and that is what the organizations do. So as I said, in the fast phase itself, even if the stagnancy comes in, organizations would like to expand to other market niches of the same domestic labor. Because the assumption is that the organization is successful because of the existing set of practices, and that is what they are doing. Yeah. But at the end of the journey in the domestic level of organizations, right? So organizations may think of an expansion, but not to start a business or a production unit or a manufacturing unit in a completely new location, but they need to depend on some of the strategies like directing exports kind of thing, or franchisee kind of thing, right? Or licensing kind of thing, all of those things. Right? This is stage 2 of this internationalization process is where you are starting your foreign operations through the export of your products and services. So you're completely dependent on your sales efforts. You are completely dependent on your retail, right? So here, to understand one thing, the products are manufactured at the domestic level, but are exported to the international territories. But in the first phase itself, as I say, organizations have to search for other host countries which do have similar sort of culture, which do have similarities along with the parent country, not to a particular host country which is completely transverse in terms of the culture and other aspects. Because that gives them a mileage of establishing their business in the host country itself. Most of the time, if you do refer to Indian organizations, like we are talking of nuts, spices, jute. These are some of the commodities which we keep on exporting to other places itself. In the third phase, the organizations do think of forming joint ventures, or they are going for subsidiaries itself. Now, whenever we are talking about these joint ventures and subsidiaries, we refer to the transfer of certain physical resources itself. Transfer of some physical resources. Like, listen, if I want to venture into a new market segment, so I can collaborate with other organizations who already have a capture in the market over there. So my part of technology and My counterparts capture over the market can help us out in formulating a collaborative strategy to engulf that particular market. Beyond that, other reasons are there. As I say, organizations need to focus on two dimensions. One, their global efficiency. Second, their local responsiveness. So in this regard, this organization passes through four different phases: internationalization process, multinationalization process, transnationalization process, and global processes. Understand? Okay. So whenever we are talking of internationalization process where global efficiency is low, local responsiveness is low. So organization, they search for the home country characteristics, which could be similar to the parent country characteristics. And what they do is they just make a replication of their business in the host country, replication of their parent business in the host country itself. So company organizations don't go for a transformational change over there. They just simply implement the kind of policies, plans, rules, regulations, strategies, whatever it may be, whatever they adopted in the domestic level, in the international level. So this scenario is what we call it as the ethnocentric approach of the organization, right? So they make a replication of their business. But whenever the organizations, they go for multinationalization process. Multinationalization process means what? Here, the focus is not on global efficiency, but the focus is on local responsiveness. Local responsiveness. So the culture, climate, political scenario, environmental factors, everything of the host country, as we say, it could be the determinants of the business over there. And as I move beyond my territory, I need to understand that different countries do have different culture. I need to understand that different countries do have different political scenarios. So I cannot make a replication of my business in the host countries itself. What is required is to make those countries or make those host country practices somehow independent. So here we are talking of a polycentric approach. Polycentric approach is that you need to give a thrust on the local culture. The thrust is given on the local culture. Right? So domestic units or the parent country units do have a control over the host country units, but host country units are taken as a separate unit. Right? So because of all of those things, social, cultural requirements or the differences that you do have between the domestic level of organization to the host country itself, all of those things are to be. So in multinational operations, the replication of the business is not being done. You have to take that local culture into account and to carry out the business. But going beyond, we say, whenever in the process, in the journey of achieving this global efficiency, where we do come across with a particular stage where the global efficiency is high, local responsiveness is also high, right? So that is what we call it as a transnational operations. So the difference is that in these transnational operations, those subsidiaries, business units in the host country itself, they do have complete independence. So they are being taken as a subsidiary of the organization, right? Beyond the corporate and the subsidiary relationships, they don't have any other relationships, right? So they do operate as a independent unit over there in the host country itself, right? So based on the demand that you do have because of the local culture, you have to modify all of your policies, plans, rules, regulations, everything. You have to come out with a different strategy because the consumer tastes and preferences in the domestic level and the consumer's taste and preferences in the host country will be completely different. So that is what you need to understand. But in a true sense, this globalization means doing everything in a similar way across the globe. That is a very rare strategy that the organizations need to adopt. You have to take this local culture into account. So globalization is where global efficiency is high, but local responsiveness is low. If I'm doing that, then probably for a short term I can have the benefit, but whenever I do talk of this long-term gains of the organization, benefits of the organization, it will be very difficult for me to sustain on a long term, right? So organizations pass through these phases in a sequential order. That makes the organization more, closer to their vision itself. So here are the basic advantages and disadvantages that these organizations like to witness in the process of the journey itself. Advantages is that most of the time, whatever your loopholes, you can gain those kind of skills and improve your efficiency with these joint ventures, with the way you tie up with other organizations, right? So superior technical know-how itself. Second reason, as we discussed, that there will be larger economic scale. So beyond your domestic market, if you can capture a host country itself, so there you can have a major market over there, right? So there, and lower input cost itself. Beyond that, input cost is like whenever we talk of these raw materials of the organization procured from different countries itself. Now, because of the economic scale, when you are going for larger volume of production, so we need more and more raw materials. So there we do have a bargaining power with us, right? We can bargain with the suppliers, the vendors, to supply those kind of raw materials in a cheaper way. We can have the easy access to that. That's what, right? Similarly, if we to talk of this, scale of distribution and promotion of that particular product, or the scale of transportation of that shipment itself, because we're dealing with the products in a larger scale, so we can directly negotiate with this, transporters, the logistics, to reduce the cost, and of course that will help us to reduce the cost of production also, right? Brand image. When I venture into the organizations, other organizations, sometimes I take the advantage of being a partner of a successful market leader. So brand image is what I can get by having my association with the other organizations. Low cost franchising, flexibility, all of those things are the basic advantages of the processes, MNCs, right? But beyond that, we do have disadvantages also. So there is always a risk associated with the business. Risk in a sense, financial risk, right? So we are completely dependent on another kind of exchange prices itself. So we say the foreign exchange, the fluctuations in the foreign exchange is having a direct impact on the business processes. So that's what we need to understand. So at domestic level, I don't have that because the price doesn't fluctuate. It's in the same, like in a currency in which I do operate. But when I move, I have to depend on this exchange values, and it's a flexible thing. Rules and regulations of the host country itself. Like we're talking of, no, even if we say that our economies are liberalized, right? The global market is open for all, but we need to take into consideration the different rules and regulations that the organizations need to have, right? So that thing has to be made clear to the venturing organizations. What sort of rules, regulations are prevailing there in the host countries? Beyond that, we are talking of different sort of legal system. Give me an example of that. Like whenever we are going for an expansion and we are dealing with the labor forces or the human resources of the organization, in USA, we do have a system called EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity Act is there, right? But subsequently, we do not find those kind of enactments in India. But contrary to that equal employment opportunity, we do have affirmative action plans under which there are reservations for various weaker class of our society. Right? What sort of leave rules are there in the parent country? What sort of leave rules are there in the host country itself? Here in India, we do work for average 6 days a week, right? But in some other countries, you'll see that they do have a 5 days week. So those kind of things that we need to take into account. We do say the success or failure of the business organization's expansion strategy depends on the stability of the political scenario. Okay? If it is stable in long run, then definitely I'll have advantages out of that. But if I'm referring to a particular country which is highly unstable, right? Political stability is not there. Always there is a risk of risk for the government itself. So in those kind of places, host countries itself, it will be very difficult for me to start my operations. Right? Operational difficulties will come like what are the market conventions you can think of, what are the business practices that will lead to these market conventions itself. So all of those are, and the most important is cultural differences. They, some or other, people belong to different cultural backgrounds, right? They work at a particular place. There's a culture mix. And if that culture mix is not being treated properly, that is whereby the productivity of the organization can go down. Right? Now, what it takes to understand this culture? A core value, right? A common thought process, which makes each and every individual tied up with the organization's vision itself, right? But people do have different fooding habits, clothing habits, dressing senses, aesthetic practices, all of them. Like if going for a deeper connotation of this term culture, because people can be like divided in terms of sexist characteristics, like whether this is a male culture or a female culture or a androgynous culture, right? Mixture of both, male and female, right? What I'm giving thrust on. So everything depends on the adaptability capacity of the people itself. Can they adapt themselves to a completely different culture of the organization? So somehow or other, whenever we are dealing with this uh, differences, a positive or maybe negative aspects of this, internationalization process, we focus on simpler versions of the things, right? We say whether we have to take people-centric approach or we have to have a product-centric approach or service-centric approach or organization-centric approach. Based on that, right, we do define the kind of involvement of these organizations in their international journey itself. Okay? So, with this background, now let us move to some of the models to understand this internationalization process models, right? And whenever we talk of these models, we do say these models can be classified under these three broad heads. There are progressive models, contingency models, and interactive models. And under that, we do have this product lifecycle model and Uppsala model. We do talk of REM model, right? The transaction cost model, the electric model, and the business model. All of these are the ways through which we can classify the model of the international trade. Right. What is the reason we need to understand is because this will give us some or other kind of ideas to implement in different kind of situations. So that is what that we need. So let us move further to discuss all of these models. The first model was the life cycle model, international life cycle model, right? Now we have understood the basic process, how these organizations go for internationalization process. Right? So the first rely on the practices that you have in the domestic level, right? So domestic level, like most of the time whenever we talk of these developed countries and they do have the access to the financial institutions, so they don't hesitate to invest in the development of new products. And say, right? So what is there? Now, when they keep on investing in developing new products itself, now the cost of production becomes high. Cost of production is more, and that is where they do target a specific high income group in their parent country only, right? So this is the first stage of the organizational life cycle where they don't go beyond the home country. Home country market is everything for them, right? And they keep on investing on the product so that the product can achieve the sales, and that can be possible only if, right, these products can be sold to specific of consumer sets. Okay. So in the first phase, let us see in the life cycle of the organization's product itself, they focus on the new product development, innovations, but they focus more it on the domestic level of operations. Second, so whenever they do have these products with an increased capacity, right? So there, you know, there becomes a shift. There has a shift from domestic level of organization to international organization. But one thing you need to understand that in the first phase of the shift, organizations will not venture into for establishment of a new unit in the host. Simply they will rely on the export method of entering into the new market, right? So if the new market absorbs the product, so then higher level of production process can be carried out, and in the next step, right, they think of venturing into the other organizations itself. Like in the third phase, when you come out with this maturity stage, right? First one was introduction phase, embryonic phase, growth phase, maturity phase, whenever we talk of, right? So in the maturity phase itself, these products and services produced by the organizations are, they become more of a commodity kind of thing, right? So the particular product which was innovative, which adds newness, may not be new for a longer period of time. And in particular cases where you're dealing with the international market itself, right? So when the organizations do have the challenge of, you know, venturing into the new market, they think of, you know, partnering with some organizations, but at the beginning phase, right, they do not partner for production facilities, right? They do not partner for production facilities. What they do is that, so they expand in terms of capturing the new market. So they expand in terms of improving the economic scale of the organization, right? More and more profit part of it. So for that reason, they are not putting huge investment on the innovation parts. They're simply, you know, tying up with other organizations. They're simply venturing into with other organizations to provide the manufacturing facilities, right? So what is the exchange? Technology versus manufacturing facilities, or maybe technology versus market, or maybe manufacturing versus market. So those kind of, you know, variations could be there. And sometimes when you do come out with the basic modus operandi itself, you will see that the market leader is no more a market leader now, because these products have taken the characteristics of a commodity itself. You know, competitors in the host country, right, can create a roadblock in my journey. What is required is that to deal with those competitors in the host country, I need to start my own production over there, right? So it's a strategic decisions that most of the organizations do take, where to start their business. That's a crucial thing, right? Like which country you should choose as a host country, right? That is the way through which these different phases of product, you need to have different sort of strategic intent and different things, right? So we do come out with three different aspects. Like first is, whenever we do talk of the stage of new product, embryonic product itself, we do talk of stage of maturity and the stage of standardized products. Now, to understand how this new product, say, if I'm into my domestic operations, I do have certain new products. I would like to expand into international things. How can I do that? That is what we need to understand. Right. So, whenever we do talk of a new product, in particularly developed nations where they do have a close access to the consumers, to the financial institutions. So these developed nations do not hesitate to invest on the technological advancements, on launching of new product category itself. But gradually, now this, as I said, this new product category will target the high value customers only. Right? But as there's the demand of the particular product in the domestic level only, so there the organizations can think of going beyond the domestic level to explore the possibilities in other capital markets of the host country itself, you can say. Right? So at the end of this phase, these organizations, they search for the ways of entering into the new market itself, right? New host country itself, and the modus operandi would be through venturing in. That is what we need to understand, right? So first they may go for export. Second, they are going for venturing into the right. So second thing is that we are talking of the maturity phase. Look, in the maturity phase, what is required? Is maintenance of quality. You would like to maintain your position in the market as a market leader. Right? So whenever the product range of the organizations do serve the market as a market leader, so there you need to focus more on qualitative aspects. Right? So what is required? You need to invest on adding new features. Whatever the product line you do have, right? So new features should be added. More on quality, more and more value should be given to the customers itself. Then you'll be able to retain the customer base. Right? So any maturity, any mature product, if it is there, then that has to be considered for. Right? But the start is third stage is the stage of standardized product. So standardized products are like the common products of the organization. Right? We say that it's a cash cows of the organization. Right? So when you do have these standardized products, the basic objective is sale will be there. The basic objective is to maintain that sale. I need to lower the cost. Cost of production should be low. Right? So in that case, what is required for us? Cost of production low करने के लिए, like in the maturity phase, we depend on more on the skill, knowledge, abilities of the people itself. Right? Here in standardized product, it is absolutely not required to invest for the addition of features. Right? So whatever the product model is, whatever the service delivery mechanism, let us continue with that. Let's not invest further. Right? And maybe that is the thing which gives us more mileage. Right? So based on that only, based on these approaches only, we need to define the international journey. Another one important survey was conducted there in Uppsala, 1977, right? Whatever we have discussed is just the same kind of thing over here. So what it says, most of the time these organizations start their international journey by considering their operations in a neighboring country or in a nearby country itself. What's the reason? Reason is the neighboring countries, nearby places, they are more closer to the cultural values of the parent country, home country itself. So the kind of cultural value that I do have, if that will not be reflected in terms of the international like organizations, so it will be very difficult matter for me to handle all those things. So that is what is required, right? So they search for nearby places, nearby markets, nearby countries, right, where they can have a tie-up or joint venture or onwards like that. Okay. So same thing happens. Export is the first such mode of entry in those kind of organizations itself. And organizations, at the beginning itself, organizations don't enter into those host country subsidiaries, by initiating those manufacturing processes over there. So what is required is we can, tie up with this market and sales subsidiaries, joint venture kind of thing, right? But maybe whenever you do come out with a kind of requirement of the consumers itself, so maybe after a prolonged period of time, maybe after a long time, okay, organizations need to establish manufacturing plants over there, manufacturing processes, right? So it's complete, the operations can be carried out on the host countries. So these are the 4 stages that you can understand, right? First one is have success in the domestic level, what I'm saying, right? So have success in the domestic level. Second one, rely on the export practices. Third one, when we're dealing with multiple conditions, so there from export to tying up with some sales organizations over there, venturing into with sales organizations, right? That can help us out. Okay. Third phase, we are going for tie-ups with other players to establish our own manufacturing units over there, right? So we can think of like developing our own subsidiaries over there, right? So the basic assumption is that when we can be successful in the international market, only when we have got success in domestic level of market, right? So we learn from the home country, the parent country itself, and then we move to the international markets, right? And second point, what it says that the initial overseas operations, they do start with closer locations itself, geographically closer locations, where I assume that there are similarities, right? So geographically, culturally, religiously, these are the places where I can expand my market. Okay? Each and every economies in the world, they do have their own cultural aspects. So what is required is I need to understand the entire process and I need to take that. Third, when we are going for initiating this internationalization process, so exporting the services or exporting the product line itself is less risky. So what I need to do is I need to adopt the mode of exporting the business as my entry to the international process, internationalization process, right? And then venturing into with other organizations, so then facilitating the manufacturing units over there. All of those are the sequential steps that we need to take into consideration. Okay. So these are the two such models, and then in the contingency model, we do come out with REM. So R stands, or R represents the reason why we are going for internationalization process, right? So here what is required is we need to understand the various approaches of the organization. So we do say that there are proactive approaches and there are reactive approaches, right? So there are organizations face stiff competitions at the domestic level, they go for internationalization process. That's a reactive approach. But organizations do have a clear vision, clear understanding of their financial goal. They would like to accomplish the economies of scale. So that's a proactive approach. Right. So sometimes when we do say that, my domestic market is saturated, my domestic market is, having a declining trend of sale, that's a reactive market. I should go for the international process. That means that's a reactive process. But what we need to do, like we need to enhance the efficiency of our product line. We need to bring some unique features of our product line, and I do have the technology for that. So what I do is that I do tie up with other organizations. I do tie up with other organizations for that, right? Where we will have an exchange of technological resources with the market resources, right? So that's a proactive approach. So what is the mindset of the organization? Whether they are going for, this internationalization process as they do have certain difficulties at the domestic level, or they do have a clear vision. That is what we need to take into consideration. E stands for the environmental factors. So everything we discussed right now, like that, all those kind of cultural, political, social factors do have an impact on the organizations itself, right? And M is mode of entry. So here, whenever we are talking of this mode of entry, you can think of this cost of entry, profitability, commitment, and other variables, right? So what is the degree of commitment that both the home country and the host country do have towards one another? All of those things are to be taken into consideration. Okay? So this is a model. What it says that whenever we do have this, three factors: your reason for internationalization, you need to consider the environment of the host country, and you need to consider all other aspects of business aspects like this profitability and degree of commitment. You do talk of cost of entry, all of those taken together as a thing. Okay. We do have this contingency model itself, right? Contingency model says it's contingency is all about situations, right? So the primary focus is on the cost. So anyhow, I have to reduce the cost. And when that can be possible? When there will be economies of scale. Right? I need to go for mass scale production. I need to go for volume production itself. Right? So that will help me out in reducing the cost itself. Right? And whenever we do talk of this objective of reducing the cost, I need to think of bringing all those structural modifications, transactions, and all those kind of things together to make these things happen itself, right? So this transaction cost is what that matters a lot for this particular thing. Okay? So friends, now we have understood the different models, right, of entering into the international market itself. But The thing that I told you at the beginning only, organizations cannot go for globalization all at a sudden. What is required is a step by step. So the rest of the aspects we are going to discuss it in the next class tomorrow, right? So till then, thank you. Have a good day.